Hey, John, welcome to the show, man. It's good to see you.
Yeah, man. It's always awesome to see you. We go in these long spurts.
I'm sorry.
Uh, we we go in these long spurts of not seeing each other.
Yeah,
And then, yeah, man, we pick up right where we left off. I love it.
we always do. We always do. So I'm looking forward to talking with you today, and specifically for this new podcast. Um, there's a whole bunch of elements of what you've done. Actually, let me back up. Let me introduce everybody to you. Uh, you founded a ultra race series in Colorado called the Human Potential Running Series, HPRS. And I really want to dig into some of what I consider pretty unique marketing and go a little bit deeper about why your business has taken off, particularly once you really decided to move in the direction of your heart of what you wanted these races to be. And, I'll get into this a little bit, but why don't you tell people a little bit about, first of all, uh, your background in running and how how doing an ultra marathon when you were really young compared to most people, how it led to all this. So take me back a little bit. Tell me about your first ultra.
Man, that was forever ago. That was in 2005. My first official ultra was the Dam Wakely Dam Ultra Marathon in upstate New York. And it's a 32.6-mile run, point to point, no aid stations, never crosses a road. It's what you and I would now call old school and badass. And it was awesome. I'll never forget it. And believe it or not, I still keep in contact with some of the runners who were also there in that race 15 years ago. I still know and connect with, thanks to social media, I still connect with some of those folks. So pretty cool, really small field, awesome race, had a great time.
What was the length? What was the length?
It was a 50K, so 32.6 miles. And, I kind of progressed through all the distances, 50K, 50 miles, and then eventually 100 miles. I ran my first 100 miler 2 years later. And
from your,
yeah,
okay, 2 years later after your very first race starting down this road?
Yeah, my first 50K, it was 2 years later that I ran my first 100.
It's pretty short, actually, considering the normal path of what it takes to get up to be able to run 100 miles. From your, now, did you do a marathon or half marathon? Anyone first? Was your first long distance running race the 50K?
No, I started running in 2004. I couldn't run a mile when I started. My girlfriend was really quick to point that out at the time, but you got to start somewhere. And all those analogies and metaphors that we have, that every journey starts with the first mile. But yeah, I learned how to run a mile, then 2, then 3, then 6, then half marathon, and worked my way up to my first marathon 6 months after I started initially running.
That's
I ran
quick.
my first marathon. And then I ran my second marathon 6 months later, and I hated it. I wanted to quit running. Because it was another road race. It was pavement. It hurts a lot.
Yeah. Yeah. So how did you even discover that there were ultra marathons, and what led you down the path of trying to progress past a marathon?
Well, I got into running knowing that I was going to be an ultra marathon runner. I made a documentary film about peak bagging, New Hampshire's White Mountains. And in the process of making that film, I wondered if anybody had hiked them the fastest. And I figured, it's got to be like 2 months. No, it was 3.5 days. And I was like, what are you talking about? And so I interviewed some of these guys, these record holders, for my film. And they told me about this ultra marathon running thing. And I asked them, what do you have to do to be an ultra runner? And they said, well, you just need to be stubborn and able to put up with some discomfort. They didn't even mention running at all. And so I knew I had those things. And so that's what I'm going to do. That sounds really cool. That's what I'm going to do next. And so I just totally bought in and subscribed to this notion that someday I'm going to run 100 miles. And that was the goal. and that makes it even funnier when my girlfriend said, but you can't even run a mile. It's
Yeah.
like, yeah.
You bring up a good point, which we'll probably dive into a little bit more, in that when you're looking at doing ultra distance, anything, bicycle, running, whatever, it's hard to avoid the conversation of what's more important, the physical ability or the mental ability. And I think everyone that I know, exactly, everybody that I know, and based on my personal experiences, for sure, it's your mental strength is far more important than your physical strength. And I think sometimes it's shocking when you line up for 100-mile or looking at the people around you. These for the most part look like
and you're like, there's no way.
Regular everyday folks. And
yeah.
You learn how strong mentally some people are when you realize that,
especially women.
Oh, well, women are so much better equipped to do ultras than men. It's ridiculous.
Mm-hmm.
And, I don't want to get into the whole equality, non-equality, because I don't have a what's the saying, a dog to hunt in that.
You don't have a dog in that race.
I don't have a dog in that race. But I've always admired women's ability, and I'm generalizing, to handle pain is considerably higher than what men's is, and it's for probably the most obvious reason. And it's, if you can give birth to a child, I mean, my daughter, when she was born, my wife was in labor for 32 hours. And I'm like, that's an ultra. That's an ultra and then some. Falling asleep. I know, it was terrible. Falling asleep. She's falling asleep between contractions. And I said, this is an ultra. That's what she's doing. She's in the middle of the hardest ultra ever. And I've always thought, I know some women, man, they just bury that pain and put it aside. It's incredible to watch.
Yeah.
So anyway, side note on mental ability.
It's going to be the theme of this conversation, is how many tangents can you and I get on? But
yeah, too ADD. This is wrangling this conversation in is not probably going to be easy, but that's okay. I still think there's a lot of, we'll go off on tangents, and that's the way it goes. But back to your race. So the Wakely Dam, tell me about the event itself. So you've been planning for this mentally. You knew that you were going to be running ultras, ultimately with the goal of 100 miles. And this is your first real test. How'd it go?
Horribly.
That's a tough race in this. I think people need to know that particular race has no aid stations, no support. Correct. And it is a real old school run in the sake that you have to be self-sufficient, period.
Correct. Yeah. So they tell you all the things that would be recommended for you to carry. And of course I had all of it. And at the time, race vests and race packs were not a thing. Like, in fact, Camelback had just come out with their first real mountain biking backpack that holds a bladder. And I was drinking Gatorade at the time. I didn't know hardly anything about electrolyte replacement or the science of running ultras, really. I had Gatorade, a banana, and a peanut butter and jelly sandwich in my pack.
That's it for 32 miles.
Yeah, man. And
32 hard miles.
I crashed hard. Probably, I hit the wall probably around mile 26, 27. I was laying down on the side of the trail, just short of a dirt nap. Trying to eat a peanut butter and jelly sandwich and a banana so I can get back onto my feet and keep going. And some dude who legit looks like Jesus, his beard and his, the quintessential image of Jesus that the Catholics have. He looked just like him, and he's like helping me to my feet. And I swear I thought Jesus came and got me to that finish line that day. But yeah, I finished the race. I got there. It was hard. You really have to dig. You really have to focus on the goal. And that's all that it is. I mean, if you let your brain trail away from the task at hand, from the goal at hand, what are you trying to accomplish, then you're not going to get there. And it sometimes does require you to reset your mind, even in the middle of it. And so, I learned a lot, but I didn't quite know what I learned on that day until years later. It's one of those, those after lessons, I guess. I don't know how you would say that, but the learning came later.
Learning in hindsight,
Yeah.
Yeah. So then where'd you go from there? How'd your progression go through it to get, take me up to your first 100?
Yeah. So, I mean, I ran 50K in July of 2005. I ran and then it kind of took a break. And I returned to another 50K in June of '06. And then I repeated Wakely and got a PR on that course by an hour.
Nice.
And so I could see how I was progressing by running the same race a year later. But then that fall of 2006, I ran 3 50-milers in 3 months. I thought that was a big deal back then. And back then it was. There weren't that many people running ultras that frequently. And then in April of 2007, I ran my first 100-mile race in Pekin, Illinois. I went to Illinois. I'm of all the places I could go, Illinois sounds fun. Let's go in April. It was horrible.
Yeah, I remember hearing about that. That's a 10-mile loop, or how was?
Yeah, it's a 10-mile loop run 10 times, and each loop has 2 river crossings, so your feet are never dry. It's April in Illinois, which means you don't see the sun. It's overcast the whole time. Rain, snow, wind, you name it. It was epic. It was epic. The mud was otherworldly. I still to this day have never seen mud like that.
There's a rope on one section to get you out of the stream bed or get you up this little peaky hill,
it's
right?
Called golf course hill. They have a rope on it that the hill is so steep. It's short. I mean, it's like 50 yards, but the hill's so steep that they put a rope there. And so every loop, I was a hero, 20-some-year-old. I'm going to see how far I can run without using that rope. I was destroyed by mile 60. Like, I need to use the rope. So yeah,
you finished it.
Yeah, I actually quit at mile 70. I went to sleep. I went in my tent, told the RD I was done. A couple hours later, he ripped me from my tent, gave me a pair of new socks, was like, "Here, put these on and let's go." And I was like, "Buddy," I dropped. He's like, "I didn't write you down. Get back out there. The clock's still running." And I had it wasn't long. It was like I needed to run a personal best 50K in order to finish this thing. And it was just something in my head was like, I don't know if I can do that, but I'm sure as hell going to try. And I did it. I finished. I got in under the cutoff. It was great. It was a really great moment. And I had no idea at the time just how that singular moment in my life would launch this lifetime of giving back, this ultra journey that I've been on. It's been 15, almost 16 years now. My whole adult life has been ultra marathon running. I never expected that. It's not something I thought of at the time.
I think about longevity in this sport all the time, especially since I haven't really run any ultras in, I think, 3 years now, doing more of the bicycle ultra stuff. But I think about, when you were talking about the people you're still in touch with from Wakely, that's one of the things that I was thinking about is longevity in this sport is interesting. It's interesting to see, again, that's a mental game in of itself, because if you're going to run these things for a long time, chances are you're going to have some real peaks and valleys between great finishes and DNFs, and having a strong desire to continue to test yourself when you've already done it over and over is a whole nother level of commitment to this sort of lifestyle, this constant testing of your human potential,
And it is a lifestyle, that's for sure.
Yeah. And it's not an easy one either. I mean, it requires a lot of commitment to training, a lot of time on your feet, a lot of being alone. And of course, you brought it to the next level. You brought it to the next level is not only were you going to have this as part of your lifestyle, but you made this your career and your job.
Yeah. It's I'm pretty lucky that there we go. I'm pretty lucky that I've been able to figure that out, and it has been a figure it out.
So this is one of the reasons that you and I, when we talk, we always talk for so long, because there's two things that we both are pretty passionate about. And one is testing your limits, however that might be. And the other is business.
Yeah.
And in particular with your business has been through some really interesting evolutions or iterations where, you started to do this. And I'll let you tell the story, but um, yeah, before I jump into where I want to go with this, tell me a little bit, like, at what point did you say, screw it, I'm not going to work a traditional job, I'm going to build a business?
Write that down so you don't forget where you're going with this. But
Oh, I'll forget. I know where I'm going with it because it's something I want to talk about you particularly with.
yeah, when I first moved to Colorado 10 years ago, I was in and out of jobs pretty regularly, myself and my spouse. I mean, what a really difficult go that we had trying to make it here. And at one point, man, I was applying to over 200 different jobs, just trying to get an interview anywhere. It was so difficult. And, when I first moved to Colorado, I created a Fat Ass series, which is a Fat Ass is a glorified group run. No aid, no awards, no timing, no bibs, no nothing. It's just glorified group runs. People come together and they run. And my first one was just me and one other person. And then that first winter, I had 14 regulars that came out. But there was a lot of pushback in this community about that kind of running event and
How so?
how, oh, you can't do that, you shouldn't do that, that's against the rules, that's against the permitting and here and there. And it's, well, if you read the letter of the law, there is a gray area. And so these fat ass runs, these group runs that I was putting on, we were operating in this gray area for a considerable amount of time. I'm like a few years, until the winter of 13-14. We were averaging over 100 runners per fat ass, which is insane. And I mean, Nate, you used to run these with me. And if you got
15,
10
20,
people,
right?
great turnout. I'm averaging 100 per. And so when I couldn't find work, a group of my runners, people who were running in these events, they threw in like an intervention for me. And typically in interventions where you sit somebody in the center of a room and everybody gets a turn to talk about why you shouldn't do something anymore. But in this case, it was a room full of people telling me why I should do something. And what I should do is become a full-time race director and start my own running business. And Nate, I sat there, I listened to them for an hour, and then they listened to me for an hour. And the hour that I spoke was all the reasons why I shouldn't, or all the reasons why this is a bad idea, all the reasons why I'd have to basically sell out on my own core beliefs and values and things I've been pushing for years. Like, I've got to swallow a piece of ugly pie, not a piece of humble pie. It's a piece of ugly pie, and just be like, yeah, I'm kidding everybody. It's time for me to do the thing that I've been talking against. That was really hard to do. But so yeah, I had a group of friends basically sit me down and tell me, this is why you need to do this. You're doing it. And I was like, I don't want to do this. I don't think I'm going to do it. And I had an LLC the next day.
It's funny when you surrender a little bit to what the universe wants to put in front of you. And I know you went in there fighting this idea sort of tooth and nail. Like,
Oh yeah, you know me, dude. I was
yeah,
fighting tooth and nail, but at the same time, but what do I have to lose?
yeah.
I didn't have a job. I had a brand new house, a newborn, a spouse with high expectations, in-laws with ridiculous, even higher expectations. Like I had to do something. And so that's all right. Yeah, I'll give it a whirl. I'll see what I can do.
So you did this for in my recollection, a few
Mm-hmm.
years,
Mm-hmm.
where I think I might be wrong here, but I'm just going to give you outside perception, is you did what you thought an RD, a race director, should do. And you did some races that were the distance that you wanted, and you supported people in the manner you wanted, but your company from the outside looked like another race series.
Correct.
And I remember, tell me, help me clarify this, but I remember you started to, it built, and then you started to lose some, some of the people that attended, infrequently, because they started to tell you how you should run a race. And then as a race director, the way I recall it is you obviously wanted to give respect and credence to what requests of your customers are. And it put you in a little bit of a confusing state for where am I going to take this business? Am I going to just, am I going to do what the other race series have done? And then we had a conversation. I have no idea how much influence on how what you did, because I think you were absolutely already moving this direction. But there was a point where you went back to the reason that you were building this business outside of making money. And from my point of view, I love working with other businesses. I was so excited to see the direction you had decided you were going to go in. And I'll let you expand upon this. And now to see how smart that decision was for you to build something that fulfilled an emotional need for you rather than just a financial need, and to see the way that resonated with a new group of runners has been awesome for me. So fill those blanks in for me a little bit. Tell me a little bit about that period.
All right. Well, first, Nate, you've got to know that conversations that you and I have had over the years have ended up still being the most profound conversations of my life. If I'm to look back at individuals who've had the most profound impact on who I am as a business owner and who I am as a human, all roads lead back to you, believe it or not.
That's awesome.
It's true though. It's you're the one friend that I've had the longest, and you've had the biggest impact on my life. So anytime you texted me to have a conversation, I was like, yeah, just say when, obviously. And I love our conversations because of questions like this. And when I started my business, I had an inner circle of friends that, they were my advisory board. They were my sounding board. They were my ambassadors. They were the people helping bring people in here. But something that I started to clue in on for myself was that some of these people are selling a race series that is not the race series that I'm selling. They're selling their own race series. Like, this is what they think it is, and this is what this person thinks it is. And then I realized that those same people, after every race that I would put on, like, I felt like I was getting a mountain of hate mail. Like, oh man, the complaint emails are always coming in. Like, every race, nothing's ever perfect. I'm always getting these negative emails. And then one day I was like, well, who am I getting these emails from? Like, if I really just slow down, pay attention to where they're coming from, oh, it's coming from my inner circle. These people who were making my business their business. And so every conversation was, if you want to be successful, you need to blah, blah, blah. If you're going to make it, and if you're going to make it big, you've got to do this. The problem is that you can't provide constructive criticism to someone when you've never constructed what you're criticizing.
Well, the other thing is too, there's another aspect of that as well. And yes, I agree with you. It's awful easy to be an armchair quarterback, especially to tell somebody else, especially when it's not your money being spent. It's not your commitment. It's not your risk. It's super easy to tell somebody else what they should be doing.
All the nails on the head, man. It's like,
but the other thing is too, is that people who love us fear for us. They want to keep us safe. So some of that comes out of, it doesn't surprise me it came from your inner circle, because there's two things. Number one, their intentions are good, but it can get you so off track as a business owner, because you can't be all things to all people. You can't be.
That's right. And also having to realize that of these individuals, literally, like, none of them really see big picture like I do about my business and what I'm trying to do. Like, they're looking through a lens that's this big, and it's this big because it's just their ideas. It's just what they would want.
Yeah.
It's what they see that it could be, but their thinking's here. And as a business owner, you need to be out here. And the analogy is, Nate, there's a difference between running an ultra during the day and running an ultra at night. During the day, you've got the whole world to look at. But at night, when you're wearing a headlamp, your world shrinks down to here.
Yep.
And so you can only see what your headlamp illuminates in front of you. That's where my inner circle lives.
Yeah.
But I'm living out here. And so eventually, yeah, I had to stand up for myself and start telling them, I appreciate your input, but this is my business. And my business isn't your business. And so don't make my business your business.
But you also made another, sorry, I don't mean to cut you off. You also made, somewhere in this period of turmoil, you and I had a talk and you made a commitment.
Mm-hmm.
And you said, okay, I don't want to tell the story for you, but the commitment to getting back to the reason that you were doing this to begin with, what you were trying to provide, the value that your business was to create, was for a certain type of person that resonated with your message, what these races mean to you. So
Yeah.
tell me a little about that change.
Yeah. So, I mean, now that I've gotten some of the distraction away, and you do take a moment to what do I have? What do I really have here? If I'm going to build what I want to build, I don't care about money. And everybody, I got really good advice from a dude one day, and he said that everybody thinks that life is all about chasing money, but the key is to figure out how to get money to chase you. And I got that advice from you, Nate.
I
And
usually say it a different way. I'm like, who told you that?
yeah. But that's basically how I've heard it over the years. And so for me, I'm not chasing dollar bills. I'm chasing people. And if I can invest in people, that's how I'm going to get this money to start coming here. And so all the advice that I'd been getting was everybody's idea of business is, oh, well, your goal is to sell out every race and make as much money as possible. And that's not my goal. My goal is to provide people with a place where they feel like they belong. This is a place for using adventure as a therapeutic means. That's what we're doing out here. I hate to say it, but everybody who's running ultras, they're working on something. There's something that they're working on. There's something that they're searching for. And so I really wanted to provide a place for people to come and feel safe, to work on themselves, to be a part of something bigger than themselves, and support one another. And if I could really refine that message and show people, and we do it here in Colorado, of all places, like this beautiful place. If I could hone my message to believing in oneself and believing in each other, the money will chase me. And so, yeah, I decided that, I think that's what you're getting at, Nate. I decided that this is my business, and it's ultimately it's going to be what I want it to be, because I'm the person that lives it every day. And being a business owner is a 24/7 thing. And so I have to be able to buy in personally to everything that I'm doing in such a way that I don't feel like it's work. And so that's what I did. Was I finally had to buckle down and what exactly do I want this to be? I need to get rid of language that devalues it, find language that adds value to it, and start finding ways to attract more people to come here that isn't based on a financial reason or any predetermined. I don't get to determine success for everybody else. And so I have to find a way to attract people here that allows them to create their own, level of success or definition of success for themselves while they're running here. And nobody else gets to decide that for you, especially during an ultra, because of given how long it is. And so, yeah, there was a process of, I completely rebranded my
That's what I saw.
entire business. Was all right. Like if this is going to go down this road that I want it to go, I need to make a statement right now. And it started with a rebranding. And that, like I used to use language like our series is grassroots, low frills, old school ultra running. Well, grassroots, low frills sounds cheap.
Yeah.
Just sounds cheap. Old school. Nobody knows what old school is. All
Not
the people
too many anymore. Yeah.
Yeah, like everybody in the sport, like, I don't know, old school. What do you mean, like 2 years ago? No, I mean like 20. Like nobody remembers that ultra running, so they don't care.
Yeah,
About
it
that
doesn't
ultra running.
resonate with them like it
Yeah,
does.
so
Yeah.
like little tweaks like that, creating a logo that more exemplified running in Colorado, which is Purple Mountain's majesty. And what kind of emotion does the color purple emote? Like, I really dove deeper into every minute detail than I ever have to
But
try and figure it out.
but you did it. And let me clarify where I'm going at. We talked a lot about it's related to that conversation. Money follows creating value. And you created a different type of currency. You created a different type of value that definitely had a cleaner focus on who the customer was. And you and I have talked about human potential for years and years and years. It came out of some of the conversations that we've had running together. And it had such an impact on you, like the idea that this running is not just achieving a run of 100 miles, but it's opening up something inside you that teaches you that you're so much more capable than what you think you are. And we talked about this over and over. And your business really took off when you decided that the environment you were going to provide was focused on giving people the opportunity to learn that they are able to do something way more than what they think they have. So you started to appeal to people who weren't sure if they could run 100 miles, but whether it's 50, 100, whatever the distance is, but your support and the manner in which you do things in these races supported that notion. And I'd like you to tell me some of the unique things that are different about your series that create that value. You've never put an emphasis on the elites or who's got the fastest time. It was always about, here's a playground for you to be in for 30 hours, and I'm going to be here to support you. And probably going right back to that time that Andy grabbed you out of the tent and said, come on, we're going to go finish this up. When you learn something in yourself, like, son of a bitch, I thought I was done. I'm not done. I got to share this with everybody. When people think they're done, they're not done. Let me show you you're not done and what you're capable of. And this sort of intention and enthusiasm, when you refocused your business on something that meant something like that, now you're unique. And now it's serving your emotional need to do something that means something deep to you. And the byproduct is that a whole bunch of people want to run your races and pay you to do it. And this is something that I talk about when I talk about with anybody who wants to form a business. When I get asked to consult for businesses and I say, okay, what's your reason for being in business? If they say to me, well, to get rich or to make money or because I don't want a job, I go, well,
See ya.
it's going to be awful hard to have longevity with that, because in those cases, if that's the only thing that had mattered to you, you would have been trying to figure out how to change your series to satisfy all those people around you that wanted it their way. You know?
Those are some harsh truths you just leveled out there, Nate. And all of that is accurate, 100%. I too have met people that they've created a business or they're an entrepreneur, and it's the why is to make money, to pay the bills. It's like, wow, that ain't going to last long. That's not how this works.
If you're just chasing money, you don't stand for anything.
That's right. That's right. But yeah, like we do things a little differently here at HPRS compared to the rest of the social construct of ultramarathon running. We don't celebrate the elites. I don't have a podium. There is no first through third. There's no age group awards. We do have an award for dead effing last, which we know as DFL. Yep. And those individuals typically get a beautifully handcrafted award from Elevation Culture and a comp entry to a future race and a bottle of wine. And we really celebrate that person. Why? Well, they endured the longest. They were out there suffering the longest. And Scott Jurek, who's one of the greatest ultra runners of all time, even said, like, I can't do what people in the back of the pack do because I can't suffer for that long.
I remember reading that.
And so, yeah, like we are celebrating the people who suffer the longest. And then we have another award called the Transcendence Award. And this gets given out at every race. It comes with a bottle of wine, a comp entry for you and a friend, and of course, another beautiful handcrafted award. But it's for the individual who we feel either best like the individual who best embodies what we're doing here. So either that's somebody that person is always giving back, or that person sacrificed their race. In August, we had a runner, 6 miles to go. And there was another runner who was totally out of water. And she turned to him and she gave him all of her water because he was in a different distance that was longer. He needed it more than she did. So she gave him all of her water so that he could finish the race and still perform. And she's like, I don't care about my performance. So she gave all the water away and just walked it in without water. That kind of sacrifice, that to me, that shows me that we're accomplishing exactly what we want to accomplish. And that's remembering that it's not a race. You don't have to compete against anybody. It's you versus the mountain. Everybody who's out there is running a completely different course. If we're running a 50-mile race, you would most likely be 8 miles ahead of me, Nate. And
maybe one day, but not anymore.
And you could have a raging thunderstorm blow over your part of the course, but it never rains on me. And so you ran through this rainy mess, muddy, whatever. And by the time I got there, it's dried up again because it's going to be hours later. Like, how can we compare our performances when we both ran a different course?
Yeah.
And so it's really focusing on what matters and not focusing on what doesn't. There's no prize money here. We have our cutoffs are generous. We try to make them generous so that more people will want to come out and just experience being together, communing and moving in that one direction we all know together, and that's forward. And that's actually going to be our big theme for our series next year. It's forward together. That's where we are as a people. That's where we are as a society. I can't tell you how many runners stopped running this year when they thought every single race was going to be canceled. And we've held almost all of ours. But, either way, it's just a different kind of race. And the focus is on being human, human to each other, human to yourself, learning, pushing yourself, figuring out whatever it is you need to figure out. And that's up to you. And so each individual is a success story here, and each individual gets to define success for themselves. We don't get to do that for you, but we are there to support you. It's like recess. We're the teachers that are out there watching all the kids, and you're going to come out and here's the game we're playing. And that's exactly how it feels. And I try to frame it that way too, is remember when you were a kid and you ran literally all over town. You have no idea how far you ran. You just know it was all day running in bikes. You were an ultra runner as a child and you had no clue. And we're just doing that again. We're not going to the moon. We're not going to war. We're just running. And that's what we did as kids. And we did that as kids because that's what felt good.
Yeah.
And so that's where we are is this,
So you do a couple other things that I think is excellent marketing.
I do a lot of shit.
But you do one thing in particular. You were just talking about celebrating the individual success, because everybody is running their own race in these things. They really are.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody's got their own goals, but I mean, you're really racing yourself. You're racing your head when you do a long distance thing, regardless of what your goal is. And you started a podcast and started featuring some of these regular guys and gals who are doing amazing things that maybe people that know them don't even know that they're out there trying to do. And you interview these people, and you have on your what's the technical name of the podcast? It's help me out on your podcast, the HPRS. How do people look up the podcast?
Okay, so my podcast is Ultra Stories podcast.
Ultra Stories, right? Okay, yeah. So you take a lot of the people that you meet during these races, who you see, they might be the average person that they're never going to be famous, but you see that they did something spectacular that most people would love to hear about, and how they are trying to find what their own potential is, and you feature them on your podcast. And I thought it's kind of a brilliant marketing scheme as well to grow the series by listening to the nitty-gritty experiences of what your customers go through. And I mean, did that help grow the series as much as I'm guessing it did?
Well, my second mentor is a guy named Garyvee.
Yeah. I think a lot of
I
people know who Garyvee is. Yeah.
I listen to Gary every day. I don't miss. Gary is in my ear
So
all the
motivating.
time, and he is. I would love to meet him. He's on the top of my list now of people to meet. But that idea of content is king.
Yep.
You just need to create content. Well, what kind of content do I want to create? What is meaningful content? I don't want to just create random content. It has to be meaningful content. And so for me, it was I went to a hot springs in Glenwood Springs one day. So I'm in the hot springs, chilling out, listening to the yoga music they play or whatever, in my little kumbaya state. And I was like, I got it. I'm going to start a podcast. I'm going to call it Ultra Stories. And what I'm also going to do is I'm going to create a race called Stories Ultra. And the premise of Stories Ultra is we're going to put an existential question on the back of everybody's bib. And you have to think about that question all race. And then if you want, you come to my little podcast recording studio and I'll record your answer.
Oh, that's
Whether
cool.
like at the race or after the race, whenever is good for you. We'll sit down and talk about your journey into running and you get to answer that question. And what has ended up happening is that a majority of the runners, I couldn't say all of them because not everybody buys into this, but a vast majority, I'm talking 90% of the runners in that race take that question seriously. It is the one thing that they carry with them at all times. It's their bib number. It's on the back of their bib. And they think about it so deeply that the conversations that come out of that, of those interviews are some of the most profound conversations I've ever had with human beings. Just listening, and you can actually see it and hear it in listening to them, their epiphanies about themselves and about life and about their understanding of something they thought they understood. They're realizing that they still have a long way to go or whatever. And so, on top of that, so this podcast that I have shares those answers to those questions. It shares those stories, but we also interview people throughout the year. Everybody has a story. I started to get really bored. Everybody's, oh, did you listen to Carl Meltzer on Coopcast? No. Why? I've already heard him on Trail Manners. I've heard him on Trail and Ultra. I've heard him on Ultra Runner Pod. And it's the same interview every time. So I've heard it. And I don't need to keep hearing about Carl and Carl's running. I got it. And by the way, how does that guy relate to me at all? He doesn't. So if I have an opportunity to provide people with content from individuals just like themselves, then they're hearing the similar journeys that other people have traveled with them. They're hearing the similar journeys of, they're just hearing that they share a like mindset with everybody that they're running with at these races. And so it's more than just a tool for me to promote, because it is content. So it does provide me a platform to promote my races, promote my business. It gives people an opportunity to get to know me and my authenticity and what I'm about and what my message is. But it also affords an opportunity to build community, because people are now building community through their common interests, which we know is that is good long-term. Like if you build a community out of combined hatred or outrage, that's not a long-lasting community endeavor. But if you're building community on
Lifting each
strengths,
other up.
yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, well, that's going to carry for a while. And that's why Spartan Races was so successful. That's why CrossFit is so successful, is they build a membership. And so that's the idea, is that we're building a community to surround us. And so it's not about me or my merits or what I've done or what I think. It's about the collective. And now I'm letting the community decide what it wants to do and what it wants to be. And of course I get to guide it, but um, man, I went in 2017. I almost went out of business. That was my third
And I
year.
remember you were at this pinnacle of like you had to make some different decisions, and you were,
I was at my wit's end. It
yep.
was like I was dry. I got divorced. I lost my kids. I had this business. I had my worst year of business ever. I was driving for Uber and Lyft to try to make ends meet. I made 25 grand that year. I didn't make it. And that's poverty in this country. You can't live off of that. And it was one of those, well, thank God I got divorced, because that means I sold my house and I had money to at least live off of for a little bit. But yeah, like I got to that rock bottom place where, like, this isn't working how I think it's supposed to work. What needs to change? Oh, the hustle. The hustle has to change. I got to hustle more. I got to change my message. I got to rebrand. I'm going to bring this podcast online. I'm going to do all these things. And since then, we've had our biggest year ever, every year since 18, 19, and 20.
Yeah, I want to talk a little bit about that. I want to talk about where I know a lot of the races in your area just didn't happen, and there's two sides of this thought process. Should you be doing anything that has public gatherings, or if you're going to, what is the best and safest way? How do we navigate through the fears and concerns of this pandemic and yet still live and still live and try to live an inspired life, and this kind of activity is a big part of that. So how did you approach it? Like, what happened in March when this whole thing February, March, when this thing became obvious to the country or the world that this was going to change almost everything?
I was out of town. I was in Houston. My significant other is a professional skydiver, and she was in the middle of trying to set a world record for flying head down at night with flares attached to her ankles.
That in
And
itself is awesome.
and I'm at this hangar. I'm at this airport, just hanging out, watching them jump. Fireball come out of the sky. It was really, really cool. And listening to the news while I'm hanging out in the hangar, because I'm not dumb enough to jump out of a plane yet, but in the hangar, you're watching the news. I watched the world around us deteriorate while we were there for a week, and she continued to attempt to break this record. But while I was sitting there, you watch the media, and we know how the media operates. It's based on fear. I used to work at an ABC news station. I get that psychology better than most. But at the same time, it was, all right, well, the reality is I'm a business owner and a race director. And in both of those roles, I'm a solutions-based individual. And so I'm not going to sit here and talk about the problem and opine about, well, the problem is there's this pandemic, and so we can't have races anymore. I'm also the most tenacious person you've ever met, Nate. I'm
One
not
up
the
for sure.
I am not the person you say no to. I'm not the person you say it can't be done to, because I'm the guy that's going to show you for sure. And so for me, it was, I got to get to work. So we flew home, and I don't think we were home but 2 days. I was on the phone with all of my land managers that permit my events to find out, where are you at? What's going to make you comfortable? If the trends are going down, when do are you holding your town events? When do you see things are going to loosen up a little bit? What kind of, and then everybody started getting bombarded with emails from all of our favorite corporations or our favorite brands telling us, like, this is how we're going to move forward in our stores. And so I started to see this, okay, so the common sense thing that we're going to be dealing with this year is covering our faces. It's going to be temperature checks, hopefully not rectally. Just what are the things that the CDC and local municipalities are going to be mandating that we do? And we take that information and we need to create our own social reintegration strategy. So I was the first race series in North America to publicly announce our social reintegration strategy. which was basically like, this is what our races are going to look like moving forward. Actually, I was probably the third. I won't lie. There's probably one person. There was a couple people in front of us that just said, this is what we're thinking. But, we were the first people to be like, this isn't what we're thinking. This is what we're doing. This is what we'll be doing.
And what was the response from your membership?
Thank you for, like, people read the plan and like, this is a really makes sense plan. Thank you for your effort. Thank you for trying to find a way for us to get back together. And in the meantime, I launched a couple virtual races. So the virtual race, I hate virtual races. I think they're horrible. But at the same time, I was like, I need to do something to keep people engaged with us so they don't go away.
Yep.
So let's just put up these virtual races. We'll still focus on community with them. That'll be a vital part of it. But now nobody's forgetting about us. Nobody's walking away. We got to keep people moving. Yeah. And so let's just keep that ball rolling downhill in that one direction. So by the time April rolled around, I had determined that my June race was going to my May race was moved. My June race was going to be moved just to give that town of Fairplay a little more time. But once July comes around, we're going to be back at it. And we're going to start hosting events, and we're moving forward. And so I took that plan that we created, and basically that becomes your little lobbying device. And I'm going around lobbying to all my land managers. Here's our plan, and this is why you should allow us to run this year. I just held a race in Arkansas. I just went to Arkansas to put on a race. I had to get approval from the Department of Health for the state of Arkansas to be able to host that event. And our plan is sound enough that they immediately said, yes, you're good.
That's awesome.
We came back. We came back in July. Our numbers across the board pretty much match. Well, I'm 100 entries away from matching my number last year of registration.
That's great.
And that last race is coming up on December 12th. And if we can make it happen, we'll be the only major race series in North America to host their entire calendar of events in 2020, which means I didn't cancel a single event, not one. Now, the other part of that, Nathan, is that I'm seeing all these other companies around me, all the other race businesses around me, they're coming back slowly, but when they put their races on, their numbers are half of what they normally have. So any race that's happened this year outside of my own, they have had half of their normal participation, or at least half of the normal finishers that they normally have. And so there's this, right now we're in a place that's like, well, why the heck are we matching all of our numbers from last year while everybody else is struggling to get half?
So if you dig, this is what I do. Have you analyzed how many of those are repeat customers or new? Because maybe you're experiencing some fallout of the other race companies, as well as your companies continuing to grow and still attract new customers to it. What do you attribute that to, other than just building trust with your customers that you can put on a safe race?
I think that's part of it, is that we're doing it right. We were the first race series back in Colorado. We were the first ones that had a sound plan officially. We're being approved by, local and state level health boards. We are doing it safely. I know that I think it's 1,000 runners have come through our doors this year, and I haven't, knock on wood, I haven't heard of a positive COVID test that infected anybody at our races. People feel safe. They feel comfortable. They see that we're all taking it seriously. But the thing is, it's not just on the race level. Like, this is a community level effort. It's only going to work if every single person that comes out buys into your plan. And so
go ahead.
That's the gift of building the community we've built. It's all these people that are invested in each other. That's what we've built. We've built all along.
That's cool.
And we don't have races of 900 runners. We have races of 200 runners. Well, why do we keep races at 200 numbers? There's a theory called Dunbar's number. And Dunbar's number suggests that there's a maximum number of people that each of us as individuals can keep track of to have as close people in our community. So it's like 125 or 150 is about the number of people that you personally can keep track of and interact with on a level that makes you close friends. And then once you go above that, you lose track of people. You lose track of what's going on in everybody's lives. And so we've used Dunbar's number as a way to say 200 is the magic number because everybody's going to know who everybody is. To your question, my next race on December 12th, I think it's 90% first timers. People who have never come here before. I don't recognize any of these names. It's the only race I have that's a flat fee regardless of distance. So I have a 1 loop for 27K or 2 loops for 55K plus. And we do it that way because it's December. You don't know what the weather's going to be. So everybody pays the same thing and you decide mid-race if you want to do 1 loop or 2. It's really welcoming. It's going to sell out. We have room for 200. And when it does sell out, I mean, we'll have matched last year's registration numbers. And I really do think it's because of our focus on community. Think about what we've been through this year, which is a collective traumatic experience. And the thing that we've all craved the most is interconnectedness. Yeah. It's belonging. It's being together again. And so, races used to start with a massive start. Here's everybody, go. And 200 people take off running. Well, now we're doing wave starts of 20 people every 10 minutes.
Try to keep the traffic down.
Yes. But what that's ended up doing is promoting community even more because people are in their little pod of 20 people. Yeah. And you're passing people more throughout the race and finding people who are more your pace throughout the race, that suddenly we're building community better.
Do you try to pair people up? Do you try to pair people up by expected time kind of thing, or is it just random?
Well, we left ultra sign up, so there's no more ranking. So it's really, last race it was distance, the distance you signed up for, and I just went through by registration date. And so if you registered early, you're in the first wave. Like, you're raring to go. But it's arbitrary. It's random. It's like, what random way can I split people up? And then they'll figure it out. And they do. The community that we have, I truly believe is stronger than it's ever been. And that's obvious by our numbers. And that's, I have a board of directors now. It's an advisory board. We have a meeting next Wednesday, and the whole conversation is going to be, we're in the driver's seat. We're the one series in the driver's seat. What do we want to do with this? What's going to make the biggest impact?
You grabbed your glove and you got in the game.
Absolutely.
And run away from this thing. And I like that. I love that outside of the box thinking of what for many people is a massive problem, for other people is a massive opportunity.
And the word is pivot. It's tossed around like candy right now.
It is.
But that is the word, man. It's how did you pivot?
Yep.
And all right, well, we just have to redesign how a race is held. How was a race held before? How is it held now? Well, you know that aid stations have typically been the least hygienic place on the planet, right?
Let's stop. For people who have never run an ultra, explain why.
So
first of all, what is an aid station? What does it provide for the runner? And why is it the thing that you and I have talked for years about how disgusting it is?
Every 4 to 8 miles, there's a canopy with tables and volunteers. And those volunteers are preparing food because ultra running is really an eating and drinking competition. You just so happen to be running. And so you get to these buffet tables every 6 to 8 miles. And everything you can imagine is there. Bananas, watermelon, grapes, avocado, turkey and cheese wraps, peanut butter and jelly, pizza, cheeseburgers, chips, pretzels, candy, like you name it, Coke, ginger ale, Mountain Dew, water, electrolyte drink, on and on and on. There's just so many things. But in the past, pre-COVID, you would enter an aid station and the table is a grazing table. It's a help yourself table. And so you and I, Nate, recognize that there's this phenomenon known as loop chips. and loop chips is where some dude will dive his fist into his Vaseline or whatever anti-friction stuff that he has, and he slathers it all over his nether bits. And then literally 2 seconds later, with the same hand, the fist is in the chip bowl and he's eating chips. And everybody else puts their same fist in that chip bowl. And I can hear people cringing right now as they listen to this.
So gross.
But now the aid station it's like a short order situation where you run in and you tell people what you need and they will hand it to you with a pair of tongs. And so the sanitary nature of an aid station has improved exponentially. This is a win-win for
that's something that'll never, hopefully, ever go back to the way it was. The way you're doing it is the right way. It should have always been done that way.
Correct.
For sure.
But there's no health code at an ultra.
Yeah.
It is a free-for-all. And so, but yeah, like other races are going with single serve packets of stuff. Do you know how expensive it is to buy a single serve packaging of?
I was just thinking, well, it also creates a huge amount of waste too. That's another problem.
Big time.
Huge amount of waste.
So yeah, the pivot was redesigning how we race in an age of a pandemic. How do we keep people? We cannot keep people safe. I cannot guarantee your safety at all. Not possible. However, I can provide the illusion of safety. And so my job has become, I need to provide the illusion of safety. And the better my...
I think that's a weird way to say it. You are providing, listen, there's no doubt that if you are ladling out some chips onto a plate for somebody that's nobody's ever touched, that you are providing a considerably safer opportunity than the way it used to be done. And
that's correct.
You and I used to talk about, I think both of us stopped taking stuff off of aid stations unless it was wrapped years ago. We've had this discussion many times. I
still bring my own food to races.
Right.
I'll cook it and bring it with me. Thank you.
Yeah. And everybody's got to handle it their own way. But, that's a responsibility that you have to your customers. And I understand what your point. I would say it a different way. You're not providing an illusion of safety. You're building trust in the fact that you actually give a shit and you're trying everything you can. And I understand your point. Safety in of itself is an illusion. And when you run ultras and you push yourself hard, you start to understand this about life. Like, the world is a bunch of chaos around you.
Correct.
Your mind tries to control it, but there is no control of it. It's how you justify it and look at it.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, speaking of all these races that you're putting on, you and I raced for years. We trained together for years, and we raced for years. And I mean, I've got funny story after funny story about some of your unique methods of training. And we had very different approaches to training. But one of the things that I haven't caught up with you in quite a while is with you doing all of this work in the field that you love. Are you still running races yourself? Well, first of all, answer that, and then I'll go to part two.
What a great question. I ran my first HPRS race last weekend.
Oh, that's awesome.
And
what did you run? What length?
I ran the 55K in Arkansas, the Razorback Running Revival.
Did you do any training at all?
No. Well, I had a great year. I did a 56-mile journey run in May that was on the Colorado Trail. That was actually, I did a really good job with. I was really proud of myself. So I trained up for that and got into some good shape. I was good through most of the summer, and then I got derailed when races kicked back up again. As you know, usually I'm directing one race a month. I just directed 4 races in the last 2 months.
Ew.
Like 7 weeks, 4 races in 7 weeks. Crazy busy. And so, my work became my focus, and running took a little side jaunt, basically, which means that I didn't run at all. And so, I did the Couch to 55K for the first time in my life. And I've run a lot of ultras. I've never done a Couch to 55K. I loved it.
Yeah. I was gonna say, how did it go? Was it great?
It was so much fun just to be out there with everybody and to experience what I've built firsthand. There's no better market research than doing it yourself and seeing firsthand, what is it that I'm doing here? What is it that I've created?
It's like being your own mystery shopper for your
yeah.
Yeah.
So, and what a joy that was. I had a really great time. I don't know my direction in running these days. I've got you know me, I have big, hairy, audacious goals. I tried to run across Colorado a couple years ago, and after 202 miles, decided I needed to climb Mount Elbert because there was a blizzard coming in. But that was 100 miles short of my goal. And so here I am. I ran
200 miles
and then climbed the second highest peak in the lower 48 in a blizzard and was disappointed because I didn't get that other 100. And so I got to try again. And I'm trying to work back towards getting into good enough shape that I can take that challenge on again and finish it, because you know how I am.
I wouldn't doubt you. You know, all through all of the races that we ran, I used to bust your balls constantly and used to say, dude, if you'd actually train, you might really kick some ass. And you never gave a shit. For you, it was always like, no, I'm going to test my mental ability, regardless of where your training was or where you were at. And it's an important lesson. Like we talked to it at the beginning of this, referring back to how important training your mind is. And but I can tell anyone that's contemplating stepping up to do any kind of endurance event, something that's way out of their comfort zone, is get your body in as good a shape as possible. But boy, you better work on your head, because you proved it time and time again. I mean, you and
I'm not the most athletically gifted person.
No,
I'm awkward. I have horrible posture.
But you are tough. You know how to deal with pain.
Yes, sir.
And you and so, you know, for example, how do you get tougher mentally? Well, I remember when you were preparing for, maybe it was the second Illinois, maybe it was the 200, or I can't remember what race exactly you're preparing.
I know where you're going.
Yeah. And it was winter, and we were talking, and I was on the phone with you or something, and I said, "What are you doing?" Because I could hear water running in the background. And you're like, "Oh, I'm standing in the tub with my shoes on. I'm about to go out for a run." I'm like, "What the fuck are you doing?" So you were making sure that your feet and socks and gaiters were soaked to the max, and then you went out for a multi-hour run in the snow, just to mess with your head. And we all had our little things. I said this on the last podcast when I was talking to Cale Poland. My thing was that I would work all day, go home, see the kids, eat dinner, have a couple drinks. And then right when it was time that you wanted to go to bed, I'd go out and run until sunrise. And that was my thing. You know, running when you don't want to run is one of those mental things that you need to practice if you're going to go through this, because there's nothing you and I can say that will prepare for somebody for the level of pain that you better be ready to transcend through if you're going to do one of these things. We're throwing it around like it's nothing, but these are big challenges, and these are challenges that we do not get in normal day-to-day life. We don't get these physical challenges that are they're beyond our physical capability, so we have to rely upon our minds. And there's something that people who do these events are quite addicted to, that knowing that I can handle this. I'll deal with whatever comes my way.
So it had been 1.5 years since I finished an official ultra. And
was that for lack of trying, or just being in a tough spot? Yeah.
Tough spot. I DNF'd 100-miler last fall, but yeah, being out there it was an out and back course. So coming back in, you know, you get to mile 30, there's 3 miles to go. Of course, I've got bonus miles, right? And
explain to people what bonus miles is.
Bonus miles, it's a 50K is 31.05 miles. So anything over that is a bonus mile, and they're free. I don't even charge you for them. You're welcome. But it's really hard to measure a course exactly, especially out in the woods. And so they always end up being long or short. This course, of course, is long. Most of mine are. 3 miles to go. I'm in so much discomfort, so much pain, my quads, my feet, things I haven't felt in such a long time. And a few thoughts went through my head. One was, oh yeah, that's what this feels like. And another one, but then it turned into, this is hilarious. This is just funny. Like, I have
when you look at yourself, like, I'm just a shit show.
I am pathetic. I have no business being out here. What are you doing, you idiot? You know, but I know how many runners take those moments seriously and they get down on themselves for failing. And it's like, I didn't fail anything. I came out here, I threw it down, I ran my own race. I no business being out here. I'm gonna make it. I am an S show. But this is hilarious. And I ended up just having I was really even today, like I'm still processing the different mind frame that I have compared to 10 years ago, where it's just, I haven't accomplished anything yet. I'm not there. I'm not done yet. I'm not, but now it's like, I had nothing to prove to anybody. I just wanted to have a good time and
It's a good
experience
place
this.
to be.
And I'm at so much peace with myself and what I do and who I am. And I don't care who's watching or if anybody's comparing my time or none of that shit matters. What matters is what I learned out here. I learned a lot about my business and I learned a lot about myself. And if you're not learning, you're dead. And so, you know, what a great time. I really enjoyed it. Such a different ultra than I've ever run.
That's cool.
That experience. Yeah.
Yeah. I just started running again. I start running 3-4 times a year. Where I start running again. And a couple days ago, yesterday, 2 days, I ran 5 miles. And it's the stupidest thing every single time that I start running again, where I get to the point where I can like run for more than a half an hour and it feels good. I start going, I bet you I could run 100. I bet you I could run 100 again.
You totally could.
I don't know, but your events are the ones that I keep threatening to come out to, because if I'm going to test myself again right now, I don't want it to be at the Vermont 100, a race that I'm used to being in the top 10. I don't want any of that mindset. I want to see if I can do it again. It's like I'm almost excited to be a newbie again, because that experience of getting through what feels insurmountable is the biggest confidence booster I've ever had in my life.
You remember when we were involved with peak races up in Vermont?
Sure.
And Andy Weinberg and Joe, there's a certain way of designing a course to just mess with your head. Like, you're coming downhill, you see the finish line, you smell the barbecue, you can hear the party, but here's a hard right, and we're just going to add
Another
2
3 miles. Yeah.
And it's all just straight uphill, except for
And
the
whole
last
time you can hear the people at the finish line eating the barbecue and having a great time.
I still do that stuff, man. Like, that's a huge part of what we do here, because it is the psychology of what we're doing. I don't want people to show up and be like, I'm going to run 50K today. And they go out and they run their 50K and they're like, see, what did you learn? You didn't learn anything. You just verified what you already knew. So I like to incorporate ways for people to really be challenged on my courses, specifically mentally, to a point where you're like, oh, I don't know actually if I'm going to be able to do this. But for everything I give, I also take it away. And so it may be hard now, but you'll make up for that if you just hang on. I've got a way for you to make up that time you just lost.
You're
and
playing
you can
with heads a little bit.
Yeah, and you can still do this. And so it really is that idea of going somewhere and being challenged and wondering throughout the whole thing, until you're for sure, I'm going to do this. Like, I really want people to be questioning their abilities, or, because that's what it's all about. Like, you need to question yourself. You need to question what is possible. You need to question how to make it possible. And that's how we grow. And so, if you came out here, which I would love, Nate, I mean, that'd be some full circle shit for me.
Yeah, you'd be watching me suffer.
I would laugh the whole time.
I know you would.
But I would also know exactly, like, if there's anybody who gets what I'm doing out here, it's that guy. And so I'd be waiting for you to come to the finish to tell me all the things.
A while.
Yeah. But
honestly, if I'm going to jump back into that arena, your atmosphere is the one I want to do it in. And it does for me, just even thinking about it. We were talking about the peak races where my first 50 miler was the peak race. I'm not, it was actually 53 miles.
Bonus miles.
Yeah. Well, they had bonus miles. They had a rock you could carry for $100, what Adam grabbed, which was insane. I mean, a boulder
I
for the
still think
last
about that vision of him carrying that
crazy.
thing over his head.
Man, would a thing weigh 40, 50 pounds? I mean, anyways, like it's not
Yeah.
enough to run 53 miles and that they'll carry a rock for the last five. But those memories of those initial tests of what was capable is like so much where the depth of our conversations about how much potential do we really have? Because we kept blowing what we thought we could do away. You know, I mean, you and I were always trying to test what we were capable of, and you pushed me hard. I mean, you came up with the idea of running across New Hampshire at its widest point because nobody.
Dumb idea.
It was a dumb idea. And you know, you were lucky enough to actually do it the first time because you didn't have this stupid thing in your head like I did. And I tried for years. I think I made 5 attempts on that course to finish it, and I never did. The running 35 miles or something like that, 135 miles on pavement. And you picked the worst friggin' route, dude. I mean, straight across, like, you did it on purpose too, to test us mentally, to just run across Route 9 all across New Hampshire. And it was miserable. But I still remember it intensely because I really wanted to push myself to that limit. I still regret not finishing that. And I still have that on my to-do list. I need to check off one of these days just to get that thing
I'll
done.
come back for that.
That would be pretty cool.
I'll come back and do it again.
Yeah. We're not doing that.
You know, it's been 12 years.
Holy cow.
I'm sorry.
Wow.
Your face.
It's been 12 years.
Wow. Whoa. You're listening to this. I wish you could see how Nathan's face just immediately dropped. Like, shit, it's been that long? Yeah, it's been 12 years since we did that the first time. And I would do it again. If it was you doing it and it was to support you, I'd be there 100%.
That would be fun. I'm not committing to that yet. I'm not ready.
I know you're not. But...
I just ran 5 miles, man. I need a little more time. So what's next, man? I mean, you know, for you, for running, for HPRS, you know, I know you're always thinking, where are you going?
I am quite a thinker. You know, we're on HPRS. We're focused on finishing up this year. We have one race to go, and then we have our big Reg Fest event with everybody pumped and jacked for next year. And I'd love to go into next year again with the message of forward together. I think we're in a place in our world where we are so divided that I really do believe good people are seeking any kind of connection with other good people, regardless of their views, beliefs, whatever. If we just want to get together, we need to be together. And we need to figure out how to do that. And so, yeah, we're really going to start focusing our effort on next year to being that, to, you know, forward together. And how do we get people together? And we're in this together, and invest in each other together, and like focus on that one word, together. So that's where HPRS is going. But then I got some other things in the wheelhouse. Eric Chrisman, who's the owner of Elevation Culture, he makes all of my awards for my races. Really talented dude, very creative. We've you know, he works on the vendor side of ultramarathon running, and I'm on the race director side. And through this year, we have been able to see the various black spots, blind spots, blemishes of our sport. It's like, whoa, like that's where we got to. That's not sustainable. That's not going to be okay moving forward. And so we're trying to create a way for us to educate race directors. How is it that you can host a race in the middle of this pandemic? How is it that you are going to be able to get back on your feet? And when you do get back on your feet, how do you actually make a profit off of this, so we can stop telling people that race directing is not a lucrative job? It actually can be very lucrative. If your heart and mind is in the right place, the level of success it's just like human potential. It's unlimited. And so we really want to try to find a way. Something I've noticed, and you and I spoke about this briefly yesterday, in ultra running for sure is once races start coming back online, and we think only 60% of all races are going to come back. 40% is going to disappear. We already know tons of races that are for sale, race directors that have up and walked away. I don't want to do this anymore. But when we get back online, because of what we've been through, the traumatic experience that we've been through, the trauma response to that is going to be an every man for himself economy, where we're not helping each other anymore. It's like, for me, I'm a race director. There's only a limited supply of people in this niche sport. And every race director is trying to get those people to come to their race as many times as they can. And if you're there too, well, you're just fighting over the same people. So get away from me. Like, I'm already seeing it. Race directors that I've been friendly with for a long time, suddenly treating me like competition. And I don't even live in their state. Now I'm not even in their, their time zone, for God's sakes. I'm not competition. Like,
well,
we've got to stick together. We've got to be together. So we're trying to find a way to get everybody on the same page of, look, this is how we can do this in a way that's responsible and positive. We can help each other, and we can continue to move in that one direction together. And so that's kind of what we're going to be working on, as a way to figure out how to bring the sport back together and help people be better business owners, be better race directors. Not saying I'm perfect, but
no, I see what you're doing. You're trying to build another community within the community. And I think that makes a lot of sense. I'd be curious to see how receptive, I mean, any business in any industry, you have a number of competing mindsets. One certainly from a lot of businesses is feeling that, let me say it this way. Some business owners focus so heavily on their competition that they are wasting their energy worrying and trying to combat what other people do, rather than getting back to our earlier conversation, than focusing on what is the value they're trying to provide for their customers and letting that be where the money comes from. And when people's businesses start to shrink, they tend to take those reactive outlooks and approaches. And it's hard to remember that that's actually the worst thing you can do, is to, learning how you can collaborate with and create win-wins with other people within your industry is sometimes how an incredible amount of money is made. And so it just comes down to, I'll be very curious to see how receptive, how many other RDs are to sort of have that same mindset with you, to put down the arms and go, if we work together, maybe both of us will be better.
Yeah, and I think the sport has very much turned into a them versus us competition, just because it's become a business, and so many RDs see it as a get rich quick, which it is not. It's you got to play the long game here, and I think a lot of RDs come in playing the short game because that's what they think it is. But I mean, even your initial investment needs to be a long game investment. Even if it's sweat equity, that needs to be a long game investment. Yeah. But yeah, it's an interesting time, and I do see strength in numbers, and the more that we can work together, the better we can make the sport for everybody. And runners need to work together too. Like I said, if we're learning anything during the pandemic, it's that it's only going to work if we're all on the same page. If you've got, people showing up to your race and they're refusing to wear a mask, well, you just increased. I don't care what the science says. I don't care what your clickbait article says, but you just increase the likelihood that we're going to get some COVID positive here, and that's going to prevent us from racing down the road. And so it really is trying to highlight cause and effect, and how business actually works. Especially, we were talking also, we watched The Social Dilemma on Netflix, and I watched that whole film, and I wasn't particularly wowed. It was like, this is what I do for work as a business owner and a capitalist, which I am, and that sucks to admit, but I'm trying to figure out how to manipulate people's spending habits and get them to buy a race entry.
Yeah, but it's a different. I mean, you're appealing to their nature and providing a value, and I think the insidiousness, is that a real word?
It
It's
is
quite,
now.
yeah, it is now. It's quite insidious of some of the larger, well, all of the social media companies who are in an attention economy, and they are building their product to 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 uh, distract you from anything else and stay using their product in order to serve more ads, because that's the revenue model, and
That's
that's not
dead.
what you're doing. It's not what you're doing at all.
The intention model is where we're heading.
Right.
The
Well,
only way you're going to survive is with your intention.
not attention, intention.
Correct. Yeah, I think people are going to see through intentions moving forward. Like, what are
So
they really trying to sell me here? And
yeah.
it's because of documentaries like The Social Dilemma and what we've been through collectively, fake news and the election and what have you. I think people are waking up more to wanting to pay more attention to the intention of things.
Yeah, that's a good way of saying it.
Yeah,
I hope you're right.
I'm,
I don't
and
necessarily
I do
share
too.
that confidence.
I'm just buckling up. That's all.
It's about all you can do.
It's one of those, like, I know this is going to change again.
Yeah.
All the pivoting I just did to get through this year, it's going to change again. And again.
And that right there is the real lesson for anyone that wants to go into business. Business is not static. When you start a business,
Cannot.
it is fluid, and the real business owners, the real successful business owners, are the ones that realize that today will be different from yesterday, and how we as a company handle today and our approach has everything to do with what your long-term success is, instead of digging into something that doesn't work anymore. You've got to have that flexibility and that honesty and self-reflectiveness to look at your business and see, is this still working, or are there new opportunities? Could I tweak this? Could I move this around a little bit? And the people that are constantly prototyping and changing and experimenting with their business to see what is going to work best for their customers. And again, right back to, how can I create more value? How do I remove friction from my customer's experience, whether it's a quicker, easier sign up, whether it's an environment that makes them feel more comfortable? The real successful businesses, in every business, remove friction and they create value. And so everything you just said makes a lot of sense to me. I mean, that's what we need to do to move forward in any business. And I highly suggest that anybody who's getting into a business right now doesn't get too dug into what they think is going to happen, but
Doesn't matter
rather,
what you think.
yeah, it doesn't. The world is a chaos around us, and your ability to adapt and move through it is really what an entrepreneur does.
That was the hardest thing for me to swallow. You know me, Nate. I'm somebody these are my convictions, the end.
You dig in. You dig in.
I do. But at some point I had to realize that these races that I'm building, they're not for me. They're for everybody else. And it doesn't matter. Nobody cares about my opinion. Nobody cares what I think. It matters what they think. It matters what their opinion is, to a degree. But at the end of the day, like, you really have to pay attention to the market. And what you were talking about a little bit ago was the difference between the red ocean theory and the blue ocean theory. In a red ocean theory, you're thinking about the market as a whole and who your competition is. You're focusing on your competition. Well, what's the competition doing? What's their number? Well, I do market research. I know how all of my competition has done since 2004. Every race in Colorado, I have their numbers in a spreadsheet. And so I see their ebbs and flows and I pay attention to what they're doing. But the key was to create a market within the market.
Mm-hmm.
And so I created my own race series I've got 10 races. So if one race does crummy this year, well, I got another one that sold out. And so my business is supporting itself to the point now, I don't care what everybody else is doing around me. it doesn't matter.
As long as you still have customers signing up and wanting to run your race and it's still growing, then what you're doing is working.
That's right. And so I stopped paying attention to what everybody else is doing around me, or good, bad, ugly, indifferent, or whatever. And trust me, there's some ridiculous stuff that still happens in ultramarathon running. And you hear the news and you're just like, really? That's what they thought was a good idea, and delivering it. Like, but at the end of the day, it's like, I can't pay attention to that. I have to focus on the people I'm serving. And so,
Bingo.
you know, if these 400 people don't like me, fine. I've got 8,400 that like me on Facebook, and I'm focused on the 8,400 who like me, not the 400 who don't. And
that's hard, because human nature, I think they were even talking about this in the social dilemma thing. You put a post on social media and you get 100 likes. You get one negative comment. And
that's all you focus on.
All you focus on. That's human nature, and it's hard to realize that we do that and to overcome it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that sounds like good advice. I'm really happy that your series is going well. Kudos for running in a very difficult environment, running a company in a very different environment. And I know you're going to continue to kick ass with this. Don't see any reason why you wouldn't. So
just one day at a time, man, that one direction. That's forward.
That's, you know what you used to say all the time, over and over and over. How do you finish one of these races? Left, right, repeat. Left foot, right foot, repeat. And that's a good lesson for a lot of things in life.
It is.
Yeah. Well, thanks, man. Thanks for coming on and doing this. It was great catching up with you and seeing you again. And you could put a little bug in my head. Maybe I'll see if I can get ready to come out and do one of your races next year.
I would love to. I'd love to have you. It'd be a great
time to be there. Yeah.
Even as a volunteer, it'd be great to have you.
Yeah, that would be fun too. But that's not what I'm going to do. I want to run. All right, man. Well, best of luck, and I'll talk to you soon, man. Thanks again.
Thank you.